All right. When we're live, welcome to episode 40 of What You Focus On Expands. This is the show about positive strategies and stuff that actually does work. All right, hold on. We have some tech issues here. So now we have Csaba Toth, author of Uncommon Sense. He's going to be here twice. Uncommon Sense, like. All right, I'm going to kick you out once. Take this out. All right. Okay. Your audio is giving feedback, Csaba? Okay. So that was Csaba Toth, author of Uncommon Sense. And hopefully he'll be back. Otherwise, you guys need to pick a topic that we're going to talk about today. All right, here he is again. Let me put him back in the show. Welcome, Csaba. Can you... Oh, okay. Now it works. Yeah, let's celebrate that. Yes, technology is working.
Unbelievable.
We're playing around with it for the past 5 minutes, but sometimes this happens. So you need to be prepared. Csaba, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Well, the short version is that I teach Uncommon Sense, which is pretty much the mindset that allows people to see the same situation from different perspectives so they can make better decisions and they can choose to respond instead of just reacting, in a short.
You're the teacher of Uncommon Sense. Can you tell us a little more about that? What is Uncommon Sense in your opinion?
Well, technically, that's the underlying foundation of Global Disc, because you can create a tool, but it doesn't really matter what it is if people don't understand why it's useful. What is the benefit of using it and what is the cost of ignoring it? And this is what unites us, the uncommon mindset, that you are able to see a situation from different perspectives so you can make better decisions. And that's not easy. Our brain wasn't designed for that. It's not easy to see the world from different points of view. We see it from ours. It kept us alive, so why would we doubt it? But because there's much more to it.
So seeing the world from different perspectives and different points of view, not just your own, that's what you're calling Uncommon Sense, because it's not common sense. Common sense is just me.
Yes, because when we expect common sense, then we expect other people to come to the same conclusion like us, even though they have completely different background, different values, different beliefs, and different experience. So that's pretty naive at its best, but it's really selfish at its worst. So when we talk about cultural differences, then it's easier to look at the topic as if cultural differences were clashes of common senses. So you can remove this illusion of separation and superiority.
Okay. So rather than making it about me as the individual, making it more about different perspectives.
Yes.
Okay. Very interesting. All right. So we have a couple of people watching. If you can, please introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from so we can greet you. And if you have any questions, as always, please ask. Put them in the comments and we'll do our best to answer them. So what is it that you would like to share with us today? Maybe something from your book, a quick strategy, something that we can apply directly. Is there anything like that you have?
There are a lot of strategies and techniques, definitely. But I think the most important part is just to confront some of these urban legends in our field. Because if you look at the research, around 95% of companies buy and sell people solutions created in the 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that because we love our great-grandparents, but we have very different challenges. When those people answer the questions, then there was no internet, no EU, no cheap flights. So they had really different life than us. But right. Most of the companies use those solutions designed for the challenges of the 60s, not today. And we can see that in the statistics. Companies spend more and more on the same solutions. They're expecting different results, and technically they are getting them because the numbers are not improving. And there is a reason for that the world changed. So the solutions need to be up to date as well.
So solutions created in the 60s for the problems of the 60s.
Pretty much.
And we're still using it. Okay, very interesting. So how would you help fixing that?
Well, first of all, we have to be up to date. I mean, if you think about an accountant or lawyer, they have to be up to date in their field. It's not optional. They have to be. But in terms of coaching and training, people can sell half a century old solutions. It's a diluted market. Often it's not regulated. And if the clients have a problem or they're not getting the results they are hoping for, or they were promised, they might come to the wrong conclusion that coaching doesn't work or training doesn't work. And that would be unfortunate. So if you want to have a real impact on the world, then we have to make this topic as uncomplicated and practical as possible. Because if something is too complex, people are not going to use it. They are busy. They have enough problems.
Mm-hmm.
We should make it as practical and uncomplicated as possible so they can actually apply that knowledge.
Okay. When you're talking about it, what is it that you're talking about? The solutions that we're offering?
Yes, it's all about the repetitive learning. So if you look at, for example, the corporate training, they have, let's say, 5 workshops about 5 different models. So which one are they going to master or practice enough times so they can actually use them? That's really difficult. So the secret is in the repetitive learning. Mm-hmm. How can we speak their language? How can we build on something they already know? That's the biggest challenge.
Okay. Okay, good. Now you gave us a lot of problems. Can you help us out there? What's your approach? So how would you approach that in order for not to overcomplicate things, for not to make people feel like they're not learning or progressing, and by helping them to learn and progress?
If you look at the diversity and inclusion field or the coaching industry, then we talk about people. And one of the most typical questions that comes up is, what's more important, culture background or personality type? And if you look at the 2 big training industries, then you have the psychometric and behavioral models that explain how the different personality types tend to behave if they are not influenced by anything or anyone around them, which is pretty impossible because you can put different people in a team and they are going to conform to certain norms. And on the other side, there are a lot of intercultural models. Technically, they are international ones because they focus on one culture group out of the many, and that is the country of origin. So the thing is that we all belong to 15 or 20 cultural groups at the same time. So when you talk to someone, even in your own family, what are the chances that the other person belongs to the same 15 or 20 cultural groups like you? It's next to 0, unless it's 0. So that's the problem with that. Country of origin is a tiny, tiny fraction of that. That's international training, not intercultural one. But if you look at the visible layer of diversity, it's insanely complex. How can you be an expert in 200 countries, 4 or 5 generations, genders, professions, educational levels, even if the numbers were correct and up to date? It's overwhelming. But if you look at the only layer of diversity that has proven benefit, that's cognitive diversity, then there are a limited number of values and psychological needs. So the behaviors that we use to reflect those values and meet those needs, that's insanely complex. But beneath the surface, there are a limited number of levers. And Global DISC is about that, the blueprint of why people think and behave differently. So this is how we can make this process as uncomplicated and practical as possible, because we can introduce the topic of cultural intelligence using the language of the most widely used behavioral model, DISC.
Okay, so you're talking about Global DISC, which is your product that you created out of the very well-known DISC model. You created this Global DISC, which has more layers to it in terms of the cultures.
Yes, because our personality determines how we want to behave, and our environment or culture determines how we should or technically have to behave. And that doesn't mean that only the country, the profession, a hobby.
Can anything. I rephrase that? So I know what the DISC model looks like, the original one. So you're saying that you're not only defining the personality type, but you are also adding the layers of the cultural types into the mix?
Yes, because everything is relative. Everything is compared to us. The real question is, how big is the mindset gap between what is natural to you, your personal preferences, and what is normal around you? So that's the cultural background, the environment, the one that you have to conform to.
Yeah, so adding the cultural difference to the mix. So that means rather than having 4 types, which is the disc, you have how many different types does that create?
It's not about having different types, it's about having different layers. Because, for example, the different personality types exist because they have very different values and psychological needs. So, for example, a D type of personality naturally has a D type of behavioral style because it reflects their values and supports their needs. But what if that D person is in a C environment? Then what? Then the mindset gap between what's natural to that person and what is normal around that person is big. So they have to flex their behavior. And when you have to flex your behavior, you're draining yourself. You're losing energy. Unless you don't conform to the norms, and then you create tension between you and your environment. And this is what we can see in the statistics. For example, 79% of new hires fail within 18 months because they cannot fit in. That's a lot. Or 75% of employees leave managers, not companies. It's all about the mindset gap. Diversity is just the potential for success or disaster. It depends on how much we understand ourselves and others.
Okay, so for our audience watching now, can you share with us something out of what you're helping companies and individuals with, so we can see it on an example how this comes to play? Can you give us a quick strategy or a quick shifting, how to shift your perception from me to the cultural aspect, or from me to the more broader situation? So so we can make some common sense out of the uncommon sense. Do you have anything to share with us?
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, first we have to understand the difference between homophilic diversity and diversity. So homophilic diversity is that.
So it's step number 1. Let's find the difference between
So homophilic diversity, and it's a really important topic, because
what is that? Can you give me an explanation of what that is?
It means that we like and trust people who are like us inside, not on the outside. And that's really important to understand, because often an international team is much more homogeneous inside than a random local team. And here's the problem, that, for example, if there's a company that employs the same nationalities and they don't do international business, often they think that, oh, we don't need cultural intelligence training, or we don't need that. But technically, yes, you do. Because if you have more than one person in a team, it's already multicultural, even if it's not international. And that's the main problem, because you can put smart people in a team and they deliver only a fraction of the results they are capable of. So this is the research that was done by 3 Circle Partners in the US. They wanted to understand, how can I put smart people in a team? I hope to create synergy by combining their skills. But that doesn't happen. So they gave an individual assessment to each member of the team, they scored them individually, and then they had to submit one collectively. And they measured the gap between the team result and the best possible individual score. They did that hundreds of times, and the average gap was 79%.
So you mean, okay, yeah? Hold on. So you mean between the individual who might be brilliant, and then you throw that individual in the mix with 5 other people who are also brilliant, and then the average, I don't know if you can call it IQ, or the IQ of the team drops down 79%. Is that correct?
No, the average potential is lost. So they are capable of much more than the results reflect. And that is due to the interaction gap, because 90% of business is interaction between people who think and behave differently. So you can have 100% of the same nationality in a team, they still have different personality types, because they have very different values and needs, which gives them different perspectives. And the result of that is they lose a lot of potential. So that's why we focus on psychological safety as well. Because imagine that we have to work together. You are really smart. And hopefully I know a few things as well. Then if there's no psychological safety between us, then all we have to fight if we have a disagreement, because we have to save our ego and we have to prove that we are smarter than the other one, Or if we understand this topic and we have a disagreement, we know that the other person can be right as well. Maybe they see something we cannot. Maybe they know something we don't. If we are able to ask these questions, then we can see the same situation from different perspectives, and that can lead to innovation.
Right.
Otherwise, it turns into painful liability. So imagine if there's a team of 10 people, really smart ones. 9 people agree, but the 10th one knows that there's a mistake there. But what if there's no psychological safety? And that person thinks, oh, you know what? They agree. Who am I to question them? 9 people agree. So, you know what? I conform to the norms. Yeah, it's fine. And that's how potential is lost. Or maybe I'm part of this team and I brought up a good idea and then somebody dismissed it. Then next time I think, you know what? I don't care. I know, guys, you're wrong. I know you're making a mistake, but this is revenge. What's the point?
Okay, now I see where this is going. I'm glad I see the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, good. I get it. Yes. Yeah, so typically, I mean, the biggest thing is the mindset and the ego thinking, and being forced to conform and not having a culture of being able to make mistakes.
Yeah. And that's why homophilic diversity is so important, because it means that, you know, when you have to employ somebody, why would you hire a person who annoys you? You know, you don't need that hassle. So even though they look different, if you have a similar background, similar perspective on life, then you might think, oh, well, I can trust you. Why? Because they remind us of ourselves. And the result is that you have a team of people like you. So when you make a decision, everybody agrees, there's no conflict, everything feels right. It doesn't make it true, because you have the same tunnel vision as a team, just like as an individual. And we have plenty of case studies to prove this. International team, really colorful, you know, on the superficial layer, looks good on the website. Deep inside, they're almost identical. And there are lots of case studies like that.
Oh, yeah. Totally agree with that. Yeah.
So that's what we focus on.
The team needs to be well-rounded. The individual doesn't, but the team does.
Yeah, but it's not natural. It doesn't feel good. Diversity is awesome until somebody disagrees with us. After that, not so much.
Possibly, yes, possibly. Well, it's the same with leaders. If leaders surround themselves with the same type of people and the yay-sayers and the ones that always agree, there's no growth.
Exactly.
No innovation. So what you're saying is design your teams more from the perspective of what's necessary, what's needed, what kind of diversity is necessary for the innovation and the growth, and then design them rather than, you know, just judging by your intuition or being aware of it.
Yeah, it's something we need to learn, because it's not normal to see the world from different perspectives. Because, you know, when we focus on the underlying values and drivers, imagine that you think short term, like you're a big picture person. I want it done now. I don't know how, but, you know, let's do it. And then you have a team member who is driven by long-term thinking. Then obviously they're going to have a very different perspective. So naturally, you might think, oh, why are you asking so many questions? You're slowing me down. But if you understand what is the benefit they can bring to the team, that they might notice something that you would dismiss naturally, then you can create a high-performing team. But naturally, it doesn't feel good.
Okay, yeah, I agree. So in case of an existing team, when the team is already existing, what's your suggested method? To analyze each of them and then try to assign the roles? Or what is it? How do you do that?
It's not really about the roles, because lots of companies use DISC and other psychometric assessment in the wrong way, because they think if you don't fit the profile, you can't do the job, which is really wrong. And that's discrimination. Because if I look at my profile, I should have never worked in hospitality, but I did for years. And I was really good at it. But because I found what I wanted to do and why I enjoyed it. But based on the profile, they would have said, oh, no, thank you. And that would be a mistake. You can do anything you set your mind to. That's not a problem. So when we talk about a team, first I would ask everybody to take the assessment so they get their own report. And then based on the data, we can create a team report to measure the cognitive diversity index of the team. Because maybe your team is really diverse, but you don't know because they have to conform to certain norms. So when we get a request from companies that, oh, we want to increase diversity, I always say, don't. First, aim for inclusion. If you get that right, then diversity is going to increase as well, not the other way around. If you increase diversity without creating a psychologically safe and inclusive environment, you're asking for trouble. That doesn't make sense.
Okay. Yeah, first work with what you have rather than adding more to the table.
And let's find out what we have, because chances are that the team is diverse. The question is, are they allowed to contradict you?
Yeah, that's an important thing you just said. Are they allowed to be diverse?
Exactly. Because this is what corporate culture is, the behavior that is rewarded and punished. And usually corporate culture is the reflection of the CEO's personal preferences. So when we talk about, culture change, then it's not about changing it, it's about upgrading it, becoming more inclusive. Can I hear your voice? Can you say it? Because most people don't want to be right, but they want to be heard. When they feel ignored, then they are going to be really disengaged. And that's the problem, that your employees and your customers have plenty of options. If they don't feel understood and valued, they go somewhere else.
Yeah.
They have options.
Yeah, of course. They're not married to the company.
Yeah.
Unlike a lot of people or HR CEOs, they think they are, but they're not. They can leave anytime. Yeah. They're really good people. They
exactly
finding another position.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that I think are super important. First of all, assess your team members so you as the leader understand, because I think that's the first step. Start with understanding. And then this might tell you, okay, this is why this person is always reacting that way when this comes up. And then,
exactly.
And then allow diversity. So allow questioning, allow mistakes, allow being different, allow, second guessing.
And then this is the challenge as well, because, sometimes you apply for a job and you go to the website and you read about the company and they say, oh, we love our people, we support them, then we are passionate about innovation and things like that. And then you start working there, you make a mistake and they slap you in the face. And they think, wow, okay, so you have those projected values, big mission statements, but the actual norms are not aligned with those at all. And that's when people go back to survivor mode. And you know what? Then I do the bare minimum. I play it safe.
You discourage people.
Of course.
You take away their power. You take away their willingness to do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's similar to, the context of the company, the environment, the values that are enabling and fostering this type of behavior. That's what needs to be addressed.
But it's more difficult. Having a big statement and mission statement and values and all those things on the website, that's easy.
Yeah, that's great on the website, on the walls and everywhere. But if they're not living it, what good is that? It's not going to do any good.
Yeah, that is going to create a lot of disengagement. And, the opposite of trust is suspicion. So you don't want that.
And that's even worse than having no rules or, values on your walls at all.
Exactly.
Because if you have them and nobody lives them, then it's like, people giving up.
But there's a problem with diversity as well, that, a lot of companies read about it, that it's so good for the business. And then they have these quotas that we need 50% men and women, and they have these targets without understanding the topic itself. So at the end of the day, they might employ people like them who look different. So on a cognitive level, they're pretty much identical.
Right.
And that's the reason why visible diversity has no proven benefit unless there is cognitive diversity as well, unless there is psychological safety and inclusion. So it's not instead of it, it's as well.
So let's summarize this. The true diversity means allowing.
No, diversity is just the existence of differences.
Yeah, okay.
On a cognitive or visible level.
Allowing mistakes. Would you agree with that?
That is psychological safety and inclusion.
Giving psychological safety.
Yes.
And space for creativity.
Yeah.
Which also means if the person is creative in a way that you haven't thought of, or it's not natural to you, still allow it.
And there is another problem there.
Sense, of course. Okay.
There's another research which is really relevant to this, and that was done by the Inc. magazine a few years ago. They wanted to understand how many employees know the top 3 priorities of their company. So it wasn't anything abstract like values and beliefs and things like that. No, top 3 priorities. And they expected at least 64% of the employees to know that. I mean, it's not a big request. And the actual number was 2%. Imagine that.
So
how efficient is that company?
So 2% actually knew about
the top 3 priorities of a company.
Okay. Yeah. It's I can totally see that, because whenever you do something and you don't constantly reinforce it, you constantly work on it, you bring it out in the open, and people forget. They have their day-to-day life and they're busy. And
so how much potential is lost there? What do you think?
Yeah.
Because imagine if those people knew exactly what the company wanted to achieve, then maybe just one really good idea could change everything. But instead of that, they just follow instructions. They know exactly how much more money they have to make next month, and they know exactly why they have to spend less. But what's the big picture? What do they want to achieve? 98% of people don't know.
Yeah.
How can you tap into that wealth of expertise and creativity?
Without losing yourself? There's
potential.
also a danger in that, because if you're going too many different directions at once, then it's probably not so good for business either.
Because maybe they have the best intention. Maybe they think they know what the priorities are. So, everybody is doing their best. They're trying hard, but they're growing apart. So clarity is important there, but it's often missing.
Yeah, clarity in the communication. Yeah, that starts when you're onboarding people.
There's a problem with the values and big mission statements that sometimes they are so abstract that you have no idea what to do. Or maybe I've got a different vision in my head than you.
Yes. So I would like to challenge our audience. Why don't you go, if you have a team, why don't you go and ask your team member, each one individually, do you know what our mission is? Do you know what we're here for? What is our purpose as a company? And see what happens.
Yeah. Interesting experience.
Interesting discussion, a little bit out of the ordinary, a little bit uncommon, not as we usually do it, but very interesting. A lot of mind-boggling ideas and a lot of things to think about. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us, Csaba.
Thank you.
And I don't know, let's end this with, what's your favorite quote when it comes to diversity or creativity or anything we talked about in the last half hour? Is there anything, a favorite quote or something one of your role models mentioned that stuck with you?
I can't remember who said it exactly. Maybe it was James Clear, that you don't rise to the level of your motivation, but you fall back to the level of your habits and system, which is a really practical concept. Because we get so motivated. We have the big mission statements, but you fall back to the level of your habits. So, every single system is perfect for the results it generates. So if you don't get the right results, then we have to change the system. And this is what we try to do often, changing corporate culture, changing our behavior without understanding and upgrading our identity. Why we do what we do.
Why we behave a certain way.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you do out of that? You don't raise to the level of your motivation, but you fall back to the level of your habits.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit discouraging.
But it's very practical because, your motivation depends on your mood, but your habits are stable. So it makes sense to work on your system, work on your habits.
Work on your habits.
Yeah.
Yeah, but motivation I'm not such a big fan of anyway. Motivation is like taking a shower.
Yeah, it sounds good, but if you can keep it up, then what?
Yeah, if you have enough running water, then you can keep it up. Otherwise, yeah, I like inspiration better. You help people start moving themselves without being dragged along with them.
Yeah.
All right, so let's. This is the conclusions. I'll work on your habits. Let me put that on the screen. All right, Csaba Toth, author of Uncommon Sense. What can we find your book? Is it on
Amazon? Probably Amazon.com or the Amazon.co.uk and all the other platforms as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, and interesting perspectives, and let's work on our habits for this week at least.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye-bye, Csaba.
Thank you. Bye.